So people ask me, did that really happen to you? No, man. So now we come to the question and answer session of the part of the event, where you can ask me pretty much anything you want. You can ask me about the new book, Lock-In. You can ask me about any of the previous books. You can ask me about the TV shows that we have in development for Lock-In and Old Man's War and Red Shirts.
Wow.
I know, right? There was a Kermit. I did promise a Kermit flail. Would you like the Kermit flail now? Because the thing about the Lock-In thing is I knew about the news last Friday, but I couldn't talk about it. And then I was at the event last night, and as it was happening during the signing, someone said, "Oh, congratulations about the Lock-In deal." I was like, "How do you know?" And they were like, "Because it's on the Twitters." And I'm like, "So, because Variety picked it up." So I was like, "All right, then I can tell everybody." So I like stood over from where the line was, like, "Hey, everybody's still in the line. Do you know I have another TV deal? That's awesome. Woo! All right, I'm gonna sign your book some more." And so I never had the proper moment to actually do a celebratory thing. So get your cameras ready and tell me when you are prepared. But anyway, to continue the schmo, so you can ask me about any question you want. And I will answer any question. Sometimes the answer will be, "I can't believe you asked that question. You're a terrible person. Please leave and never come back." So as long as that's clear, that we'll take any questions. So are we ready for the Kermit flail?
Yes.
Okay. Ready? That's so going up on YouTube. It's going to be on your site. No matter what else goes up on the site tomorrow, that part's
It'll be in the loop.
It'll be in the loop. There we go, the Scalzi gap. So, seriously though, questions, anyone? Raise your hand. Start with you.
Any desire to do a follow-up to Shadow War of the Night Dragons? Probably the funniest thing I've ever seen.
Shadow War of the Night Dragons, Book 1, The Dead City, Prologue. Yes. No. That was such the weirdest thing, right? Because they contacted me, Tor contacted me, and they said, "We want to do this April Fool's thing," and I said, "All right, I'm certainly happy to do that." And so we did Shadow War of the Night Dragons, Book 1, The Dead City Prologue, which is, which was hysterical to write because it was intentionally bad writing, but it was intentionally bad writing that you had to keep reading, which is actually a little more difficult to do than you might suspect. And it really took a life of its own. I mean, we put it out there and they're like, "We got a 3-book deal, Shadow War of the Night Dragons." And the reason that it was called Shadow War of the Night Dragons, just in case you didn't know, was that Tor did a thing at a few years ago where they did a statistical analysis of the titles of all science fiction and fantasy books and figured out what the most common words were in each of the titles, in all of the titles. So shadow, number 1, war, number 2, night, 3, dragons, 4. And so they said, if you were going to name the most successful science fiction / fantasy book of the next 10 years of the 21st century, it would be Shadow War of the Night Dragons, Book 1, The Dead City. All of these in order of their actual popularity. So they put that article up, and I was immediately there with typing up a response, and my response, I think, was the first response. It's like, "I will write that for you, Tor. Please back up the money truck." Right? And then Tor, and then Irene Gallo, who is the editor of Tor.com, and says, "I so want this to happen." I was like, "All right, I will do it for you, but I have demands. The first is, of course, the money truck. Number 2, I want a robot butler. Number 3, I want a lifetime supply of pony glitter. That's my lifetime, not the pony's lifetime." So I had all these demands, and then they call me up and they're like, "We would actually like you to write, as an April Fool's prank, this Shadow War of the Night Dragons." And I was like, "All right, but the demands are still in play. I didn't get the sparkle glitter and I didn't get the robot, but they did send me a truck full of money. It was a Tonka truck, but So we did it. And the thing is, of course, it comes out on April 1st, and like 98% of people get it, right? They absolutely get it. It's like, it's April Fool's. It's an April Fool's joke. Got it. But then there's a 2%. And they were like, "This is terrible." first sentence, it's run-on. It's a run-on sentence. He uses the word black 11 times. And the third sentence is, it was a dark and stormy night. So they didn't quite get it. And it's like, and there's nothing you can do. If people can't figure out it's April 1st and it's not serious, then you just kind of let it go. But there were actually a couple of people who didn't get it. And some of them were like serious people. Like one of them was, someone was like, hey, I wanted to interview you. Would that be okay? And I was like, cool. And I was like, can I email you the interview questions? And I'm like, absolutely. So he emails me the interview questions, and like question one is, you're transitioning away from science fiction into fantasy with your 3-book deal for Shadow War of the Night. And I was just like, I need to send these questions back to you, and here is why. So I thought, okay, that is my guy doesn't get it, right? I thought that was going to be the thing. And then my agent calls me, and he says, are you sitting down? And I'm like, no. He says, sit down. Okay, I'm sitting down. What is it? He says, that April Fool's thing, Shadow War of the Night Dragons, that you did? And I said, yes. And he says, there's Hollywood interest. No, there's this producer, and he's a big producer, and he produces these things, these movies about a boy wizard with a scar, and he says, we would like to see the galley of Shadow War of the Night Dragons. What did you tell him? What did you say? And he's like, I told him that it was an April Fool's prank. I was like, you fool! We could have written this all the way. 7-movie series, Shadow War of the Night Dragons, Christmas 2016. So, I didn't fire him. But yeah, I mean, and then the next year we did the prank where we said it's going to be a manga, right? And some people fell for that again. And then the next year we did Shadow War of the Night Dragons, the musical, Shadow War, exclamation point. And you wrote this whole story up where, you know, it was me going insane with Paul and Storm as my musical collaborators, and they created this, you know, musical thing. And again, you would be looking at it as like, you should know it's April 1st. This is a joke that we've been running for 3 years straight. And so there are some people who's like, I cannot wait for that musical. So cannot wait. And so the real joke would be for me to actually write Shadow War of the Night Dragons and have it released and have just people stare at it in the bookstores like, if I touch it, it's going to explode. That's exactly what's going to happen. You can't fool me a 4th time.
I just want to see if you can keep that up for 300 pages.
Well, you know, no, you can't. And that is the thing, which is that, you know, you get to, there was 3,000 words. And at the end of 3,000 words, I'm like, I'm so tired. Because it's so hard to do. And just then trying to do that for another 97,000 words or something like that is crazy. I ended up doing Red Shirts, which was somewhat farcical, but it was slightly different humor. But yeah, that particular kind of humor is actually very exhausting. And it really is meant to be, I mean, there's a reason why Monty Python was a sketch show, where it's like 3 minutes and out, because there's only so far that you can take a joke before. And now, non sequitur, moving on to the next one, right? And so I think that's part of what does it there. The ultimate joke about it, of course, it was nominated for a Hugo, right? Which was, you know, I'm sitting there at my on my couch, and you know, then I get bing, you know, an email, and it's the, you know, Hugo committee, because the Hugo committee sends you an email about whether or not you want to actually accept the award or not. And I'm like, oh, you know, because Fuzzy Nation was the book that came out that year. And I was like, oh, maybe Fuzzy Nation got a nomination. That would be awesome. And I opened it up, and it's a nomination for Shadow War of the Night Dragons. And I'm like sitting there on the couch, and I'm literally like, and I start laughing hysterically, and I get up, and I start going, and my daughter's like, you've gone irretrievably insane. How did you find out? You know, she actually said that. And I'm like, no, I will be fine. And so it was nominated that year, and you know, some very serious people, you know, gave birth to some very serious bricks. We were like, you gotta be kidding. And I will not lie, I was relieved that it did not win, because, you know, particularly in the particular field that it was nominated, there were much better stories that deserved to win, and Mr. Liu won for that year, and deservedly so. But it was fun to be nominated because, in fact, like I said, even at 3,000 words, making it intentionally bad but good enough to read and make people wait, I don't know if this, I could, oh, you're hurting my brain. That actually, if you think that's easy, go ahead and do it. So, next question.
You were talking about red shirts, which I loved and thought had a great humor to it, and I wonder how that would translate into a television show. Not that it's a one-trick pony or anything, but
oh, come on, you can say it.
it's got a certain, you know, literary sense to it that I just don't know how well that translates, since it's sort of mocking some of the classic science fiction television shows.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are your thoughts about translating that into a TV show or a movie or?
Well, the short answer is that it's not going to be the book. I mean, no matter what, there's going to be some adaptation to it, and it's going to be a mini series, in fact. So it's going to be about 10 hours. They're not going to make a series out of it like season 7. They still haven't figured it out because really, by that time, you're just like, dude, you just deserve to die. So it's meant to be, you know, a good 8 to 10 hours in and out and do that fine. And I think in that sort of time frame, you can actually play with that structure that is in the book. Now, one of the things that I tell people with any of the books that are being adapted, you know, because like I said, the Old Man's War and Red Shirts and Lock-In, is that they will be adaptations, which is that they will not be the book. The book is never going to change. When people say, are you worried about what they're going to do to your book? It's like, no, the book will always be the book. I own the copyright on the book. The book is not going anywhere. But what they will do is that they have a commitment to actually make it something that's interesting in the medium of television. And so that means that some things are going to be compressed, some things are going to be expanded, some things are going to be chucked out, some things are going to be brought in. It's all going to work in that way. And what hopefully you get is a final product that gives you the same feel that you got when you were reading the book, but not necessarily in the same, you know, with the same exact details. Now, with regard to Red Shirts in particular, I've met with the writers and I know the producers. Ken Kwapis, who is the director-producer in charge of that, he was part of The Office. He did the finale of The Office. This is someone who knows how TV comedy works. The screenwriters have done comedy and done television before. Everybody has a knowledge base. And, you know, and they have the questions of, well, how do we incorporate in the codas, for example? You know, how do we get, you know, the growing, you know, realization of the people in the story that they are part of, you know, a weird universe and so on. And so these are things that they're taking very seriously, and they're looking for ways to get that into the TV format. Are we going to be successful? I would like to say yes, because I want everything I do to be successful. But we will have to see. I have confidence in each case, in each of the partners that I'm working with. You know, Old Man's War, I'm working with Wolfgang Peterson, who did Dust Boot and In the Line of Fire and Perfect Storm. So, you know, fairly high confidence for that. And people are like, yeah, but he also did Troy and Sideways. Like, shut up. I don't want to hear that. And besides which, those were very financially successful movies. Even Poseidon did well internationally, so shut up. And you know, with Lock-In, which is the one that we got to announce yesterday, I mean, that's Legendary Pictures, and they did all the Dark Knight and Chris Nolan stuff, so you're like, yeah, they might know how to do this thing. You always try to, you know, hook up with the people who actually have evidenced competence before. In all of these things, the least competent person involved in the process is me, which I find very, very encouraging. You know what I mean? And I'm not incompetent. I spent 2 years as a creative consultant on Stargate Universe. I know how television works. So as far as it goes, I feel very confident about what we're doing. So you know, they're writing the scripts now. Feedback. I will tell them what I think works and what doesn't, and we'll see how it goes from there. So.